Did the Steam Deck just put the final nail in the coffin for the Nintendo Switch? How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Deck Ready. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and this is the weekly news update for everything around the Steam Deck. The first thing I want to tell you guys, I've been absolutely addicted to this game called Chronicon, which is basically like if you took Diablo 3 and made it pixelated. It's made by, I think, 2 people, and it's absolutely awesome. It runs right out of the box on the Steam Deck, has built-in controller support. It runs at 60 FPS at the native resolution, and I've been having a ton of fun with it, playing it every night since, I know you can get Diablo 3 running. I've done it before. I know you can get Diablo 2 Resurrected running. I've done it before. It's just nice to have something through Steam that runs incredibly well and doesn't drain your battery life. Like, this game was giving me 4 hours of battery life, so I wanted to give it a shout out here, like I did with Grim Dawn last year, and a lot of people seem to like that. So this game is around 20 bucks for everything. The DLC is like a new class, I'm pretty sure, called the Mechanicist or something like that. Regardless, you should check this game out if you're into Diablo or you're still feeling like you want to play some more after getting through the Diablo 4 beta over the weekend. The first news story I have for you guys today is that The Last of Us Part 1 on Steam Deck and PC as a whole has pulled the worst bait and switch we've seen in a while. So the original story with this game was that it was going to come out on March 3rd, my birthday, and then they delayed it till the end of the month, which is this week, and it's fine, right? Like, delay the games, get them running. Of course, I would have been happier if the game came out on my birthday, but it looks like it needed more time in the oven and was pushed out too early just to capitalize on the finale of The Last of Us TV show and all of the hype behind it. Like, I'm sure Sony would have much rather it come out on March 3rd while people were still watching the show, but a couple weeks after is still pretty good, especially for PC players. The first big red flag came from the fact that Sony did not send out review copies for this game, which Sony never does, so obviously they knew something was up with it. And then once you actually get your hands on the game, on the good side of the fence, it does have shader compilation on launch. The first time you play the game, it compiles all the shaders. The issue is, no matter where you're playing on PC or on Steam Deck, I know the Steam Deck's a PC, but they're different, right? Like, we're separating them out. But the other side of the coin is that whether you're on the Steam Deck or even some beefier gaming PCs, that shader compilation can take over an hour to complete, which is absolutely nuts for that to happen. Like, I've seen games take up to 5 or 6 minutes. I think Horizon Zero Dawn, once they finally implemented the shader compilation in that game, it took a little bit longer, but man, over an hour, that's absolutely crazy. And I don't want to complain too much about that because it is nice that they have that feature built in, since that's been a huge problem point for so many games lately, like Dead Space, for example. The shader compilation happens the first time you launch that game, and it's still broken. Like, Motive has completely given up on that game on PC, which sucks because it still has major traversal stutter. But if you want to make sure that the shaders recompile if you're on PC, you basically have to go into documents and delete that folder of shaders that is in the Dead Space folder, which is annoying, right? Like, that sucks. But it is nice that we're seeing so many games have this shader compilation feature built in the first place, right? It just sucks that there's no better way. Personally, it's just frustrating that there's no better solution here, because I've been a PC gamer for like over a decade, and I don't know if it was I just wasn't noticing the stuttering issues or something like that, but I really don't understand this becoming an issue over the past couple years in the insanely huge way that it has. Like, I've never had top of the line specs in my PCs, and even though now my main PC has a 3080 Ti, it's a laptop GPU, so that's not even close to a desktop grade graphics card, especially not even close to a 3080 Ti, and I've always had no issue with stuttering or getting games to run at least 1080p 60 frames per second. I used to be able to max games out, and now I'm lucky if I can get games to run at high with DLSS on my PC, which feels nuts. Having to play tech support for every game that comes out to try and minimize the stutter as much as possible, that was never a thing for the past like 8 out of the 10 years or more I've been playing PC games, so it really sucks. Of course, we got the usual message from Naughty Dog. Not that Naughty Dog usually sends out messages like this, it's just that always PC devs send out messages like this where they say, hey, we're working on it, we're sorry that people are having issues, just hang tight, we'll get a patch out eventually and everything will be fine. I just wish we didn't have to see that message in the first place, and that these games could be held until they're actually finished, like we have seen with literally every game in the Last of Us series over on PlayStation 5. The Last of Us Part 1 was delayed for months so they could finish up the polish on that. It came out and it ran great on the PS3. The Last of Us Part 2 was delayed for months so they could polish it up, and it came out and ran great on the PS4 and PS4 Pro. I don't understand why, other than the fact that they wanted to capitalize on the show's release, that we're not seeing the same thing with The Last of Us Part 1 one on PC. This is Sony's biggest game. You'd think they'd want to make some sort of a splash with it that isn't negative, but I don't know. The other weird thing about this port that I saw is that Iron Galaxy has worked on it in some capacity. I saw a tweet going viral that said Iron Galaxy is the reason that the Arkham Knight PC port was so bad to the point where Warner Brothers had to take it off of Steam for months while they basically completely rebuilt it. And then when it came out, it still wasn't perfect. Ironically, it had stuttering issues back in the day. So I guess my whole rant about this not really being an issue was wrong in that specific instance, you know? But even though that was back in 2015, there have been plenty of ports from Iron Galaxy that have had issues as well. And I don't understand why Sony, who owns Nix's, who does really good high quality PC ports, is going with Iron Galaxy to do their Iron Galaxy in the first place to be doing this port. Use your internal developer that you bought to do PC ports to make sure it's up to the standard of all your other PC ports. Like, it's absolutely crazy that this was even allowed to happen in the first place. The one big silver lining here is that we have Valve. They've done such a good job with big games. Even Diablo 4's beta, which is not playable on Steam. You needed to use Battle.net, which you install through Lutris. There is a way to do it the other way where you add it as a non-Steam game, which works pretty well as well. Valve figured out a way to add in special stuff into Proton Experimental to make that game run better on the Steam Deck. A beta of a game that isn't available on Steam was made better by Valve putting in the work, which is awesome. So hopefully they do the same thing for The Last of Us Part 1. I just really hope that as time goes on and people complain about this stuff more and more and use Alex from Digital Foundry's Stutter Struggle hashtag more and more, developers start actually putting time into their PC releases so we don't have to deal with this in the future, because PC gaming is the biggest it's ever been at this point in time. But consistently, every release that comes out, it feels like, has major problems on PC, unless it's from Capcom. For some reason, Capcom, for years, ever since Resident Evil 7, has been like the only dev putting out quality PC ports that I can think of. And like Bungie was another one I could talk about. Lightfall has some of the worst problems on PC I've ever experienced in Destiny. Like, every season, the frame rate problems get worse and worse, and they just refuse to acknowledge it. So yeah, PC gaming as a whole, pretty rough right now. The Last of Us Part 1, super rough right now. Don't buy it on the Steam Deck or your main gaming PC until it's fixed. And even then, I would wait for a sale, because we don't want to reward this behavior with full priced purchasing. Next up here, when I got into the studio today, there was a box sitting on my desk from JSOX, and it was full of individual boxes. And when I opened it up and realized what they were, I got super excited. So these are the transparent backs for the Steam Deck, where you can replace the back of your Steam Deck, make it kind of look like the classic N64 or Game Boy colors that I had back in the day, which is awesome. The first one I got was really cool. It was black, it had Deck Ready engraved on it, but I was really holding out for a purple one that matched the atomic purple Game Boy Color. And I don't know if they already had this in the works or if they were listening, but that's exactly what I have here in the box. So I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like before I go ahead and put it on my Steam Deck. So this is a first time unboxing for me too. And yeah, this looks exactly like the atomic purple Game Boy Color that I grew up with, and I cannot wait to get off of work, drive home, and put this on my Steam Deck. I really hope they eventually start making front panels for the device too. I know that would be a lot harder to install, obviously, because you've got to take the entire inside of your Steam Deck out, and you'd probably have to replace the buttons as well, but this feels exactly like the OEM back of the Steam Deck, and the back buttons also feel exactly the same. And I've seen on The Verge that this heatsink here actually cools the thing down when it is in use. So it has some utility to it outside of making the back of your Steam Deck look extremely cool. So yeah, they have other colors like red, which reminds me of the orange N64. They've got green, they've got blue, they've got a more white shaded transparent color. So if you want to check these out, they are linked down in the description. And I think they're only like 20 or 30 bucks. So it's not that much of an expensive upgrade. Next up, I actually have some more positive news for you guys. So Amazon is running their spring sale right now. And with that sale, we are getting big discounts on micro SD cards. Now look, there are 256 gigabyte, 512 gigabyte micro SD cards. I would just not even worry about those. Go straight for the 1 terabyte option with the Steam Deck, because right now it's on sale for over 50 bucks off, and you can get it from SanDisk for around $100, which is the cheapest I personally have ever seen one of these bigger micro SD cards. Now I know in the past with the Steam Deck there have been a couple issues with how fast SD cards download games versus the internal storage, and also loading can take a little bit longer longer on the Steam Deck with SD cards. But Valve has done a pretty good job over the past few months updating the Steam Deck, where I've noticed this not really being an issue at all. My Steam Deck is pretty full because I use the desktop side of it to save all of my music. I also have a ton of external games in the Epic Store and Battle.net with all the Diablo games and everything like that. So my internal storage, which is a terabyte, is pretty much full all the time. And so I've been using my micro SD card, which is also a terabyte, quite a bit more on the Steam Deck lately, and it's like totally imperceivable for me at this point. The one PSA I have to give though every time I talk about micro SD cards is that if you are doing anything where you have to take the back off of your Steam Deck, like using one of JSOX's new transparent backs, or you're upgrading the SSD, or you're fixing something inside your Steam Deck, make sure you take the micro SD card out of your Steam Deck, because I've seen this happen to way too many people where they leave it in, they pop the back off, and it actually snaps the micro SD card in half, which really sucks, especially when you're spending over $100 on something like this in the first place. And just for comparison's sake, if you want to get a 512 gigabyte version of the SanDisk card that I use, it's only going to cost you $47, but honestly, I would just pay 2 times more once again and get a 1 terabyte card. I have seen quite a few Reddit posts where people have SD card cases and they basically make like switch cases for their Steam Deck games. Like they'll have an SD card that only has 1 game on it and they just pop that into their Steam Deck because the library feature transfers no matter what. And I think that's really cool. It's just like there's not really anything cooler, in my opinion at least, than having as much of your Steam library as possible saved on your Steam Deck so you can play basically whenever you want. I know it's cool having the cases. I just like having everything downloaded on my Steam Deck ready to go. So yeah, that was just a quick PSA. I will link all the cards that are on sale down in the description as always. And the last news story I have for you guys today is that when it comes to emulating Nintendo consoles on the Steam Deck, things are about to get easier than they've ever been. The first thing I want to talk about is that Yuzu, the Nintendo Switch emulator, that if you show any footage from it, your video will get wiped from YouTube, so I'm not going to show any footage. That apparently runs Breath of the Wild now at a near flawless 1080p on the Steam Deck, so it effectively removes any need for the Switch. And also, a lot of other games that were having issues over the past year or so with Yuzu on the Steam Deck have been resolved. One game that I know a lot of people play on Yuzu versus actually using the Battle.net client is Diablo 3, because for some reason Blizzard never updated Diablo 3 to have an offline mode. They never updated it to actually have full controller support. There are some awesome community layouts on Steam for Diablo 3 already. Having the cursor on the screen at all times really isn't as cool as using the controls that I was using on the Nintendo Switch like 3 or 4 years ago whenever that game first came out, you know? So what people do is they just emulate the Nintendo Switch version because it runs incredibly well on the Steam Deck. The only issue there is you lose out on seasonal characters and being able to connect to the internet, which is a huge part of Diablo. Like having the offline mode is sweet, but in Diablo 3, being able to play multiplayer and connect to the internet is also a huge aspect there. So yeah, you get trade-offs no matter what. I wish Blizzard would have updated Diablo 3 to have the same features as the console editions, but in a few months that won't matter when Diablo 4 is out, because thankfully, like I mentioned earlier, that is running pretty well on the Steam Deck. And the second piece of Nintendo news is that Dolphin, the emulator for GameCube and Wii, is coming to Steam. Now, before you get too excited, it's not like you're going to be able to download ROMs or anything from Steam for Nintendo GameCube games or anything like that. You're still going to have to probably set this up the same way you would if you weren't using EmuDeck or anything like that over on the desktop side, or if you've ever set it up on your PC. Like, you're probably going to have to go get the BIOS yourself, you're going to have to provide the games yourself, but being able to have it natively on Steam is awesome. I think that's really cool because everything they do to bring the user experience into Steam itself makes it more accessible to people who are kind of nervous about going into the desktop mode and maybe downloading something like EmuDeck from the internet, right? Like no one wants to screw up their device. So yeah, having RetroArch and now Dolphin in Steam is great. Obviously, it would be better if there was a way to have everything you need in Steam as well, but they can't do that because Nintendo will just take it down. I guess rightfully so, but still. So yeah, that about covers it for the Steam Deck update this week. Make sure you check out Chronicon and let me know if you like it down in the comments below. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Shape on.